Friends, colleagues, sisters and brothers all, good evening. Good evening. And thank you for giving me this very special honor and joy of participating in this evening's program. As I thought about what contribution I might possibly make, I decided to draw on passages in my own journey to share certain stories that speak to the value of liberal education, to the necessity for effective community service, and the power of the arts to enrich and transform our lives. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, in the days of legal segregation, where the dominant narrative was this: no matter what I did, no matter what I tried to do, I would never be as smart or as worthy as white folks. And the expression of this wretched myth, well, those expressions were found in colored versus white bathrooms, water fountains, places on a bus, schools, and libraries. But how fortunate I was to grow up in a family and to be a part of a community that insisted on a counter-narrative, namely, that segregation was morally wrong and built on a fundamental premise for which there was no evidence. And so my parents, my teachers, my Sunday school teacher, my Girl Scout leader, the librarian, Olga Bradham, in the colored public library, all helped me to understand that I could indeed soar, that I could soar to the height of my possibilities, despite the despicable system of racial segregation. And those wonderful folks in Jacksonville, Florida, who grew me up, they said that education was the key to my soaring, and that education was the best possible tool, not only for the liberation of an individual, but for the liberation of a people. Well, I look back with pride, and I look back with enormous gratitude on how fortunate I was to receive the kind of education that we call a liberal education. Yes, I went to segregated public schools in my elementary grades, but those African American teachers were amazingly effective in helping me to begin my journey, not only in the world of education, but they helped me to discover what it means to be a good human being. Middle school for me took place in a private all-girls school, a school for colored girls, where I not only received a liberal education appropriate for that level of schooling, I had clear and lasting instruction that set me up to own my power and, yes, my responsibilities as a woman. My undergraduate education was steeped in the liberal arts tradition. As I went off as a 15-year-old girl on the edge of being a young woman to Fisk University, one of our historically black institutions located in Nashville, Tennessee. I went there as an early entrance student. And from Fisk, on an exchange program, I went to Oberlin College and, in fact, never returned to Fisk. Oberlin, that institution in our country that was the very first to accept African Americans as students, and the first as a four-year institution to accept women. And what kind of an education is a liberal education? How well all of us here know what it is. As a dictionary would in fact tell us, it is an approach to learning that empowers individuals and prepares them to deal with complexity, to wrestle with diversity and change. It provides a student with a broad knowledge of the wider world, as well as a deeply ingrained interest in a specific area of study. Now let me go back to those days in the segregated South, where my parents and all in my community taught me a counter-narrative to the dominant one that was grounded in racist ideology. My parents and all in my community taught me that not only was racism and segregation wrong, but that I had a responsibility to work to help to put an end to it all. But the message from my folks was even broader, in that they said that I had a responsibility to do whatever I could to make my community, my nation, yes, my world, better. How was I to do that? Through service. And so over and over again, I was told that doing for others is just the rent you gotta pay for your room on earth. And as I have lived my life as an advocate and an activist for civil rights, for women's rights, for human rights, as I've done my best to be a public intellectual, as I continue to engage in community service, I do so in acknowledgement of these words of Dr. Martin Luther King. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? I try to always remember the words of one of my sheroes. For every hero in the world, there is at least one shero. Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, the founder of Bethune-Cookman College that now is Bethune-Cookman University, always challenged us to go on and rise to the top, to climb as high as we were capable of going. But said Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, remember, you must lift others as you climb. And I always try to live my life in some way in concert with the words of the great Jewish humanitarian, put into the most wretched of conditions during the reign of Nazi Germany. Elie Wiesel, who has said, "Our lives do not belong to us alone. Our lives belong to those who need us the most." And finally, let me go back to those early days in my life in Jacksonville, Florida, where as a young African-American girl, I could not go to an art museum, a ballet, a symphony, the white folks' theatrical performances. But oh, was I fortunate to grow up in a family that understood not only the beauty in the arts, but the necessity for having the arts in our lives. Today, as I have the privilege and the joy of serving as the director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art, I think back to those days in Jacksonville, Florida, where my mother instilled in me a passion for the visual arts. Now, as we would say in the museum world, my mama had the eye. That is, without formal training in art history, she had an eye for good art. My mom adorned our home. Yes, they were reproductions, but they were reproductions of the masterworks of African-American artists. My 1 year at Fisk University plunged me deeper in love with the works of African-American artists, and yes, the work of African art as well. And once I began my studies at Oberlin College, I found a place where there were objects so priceless and so powerful. The place, the Allen Memorial Art Museum. And indeed, if I had not discovered anthropology as the discipline that I would pursue, I suspect I really would have become an art historian. And so, my sisters and brothers all, as I look back on my journey, I see such compelling evidence of the importance of a liberal education, the absolute necessity for community service as a way of making our world better. And I see an appreciation for, and certainly the need to support the arts. This evening's program is a tribute to the very special intersectionality of education, service, and the arts and humanities and design. So congratulations to each of you who is here, because in some way you honor the coming together of those three human endeavors. And of course, very special congratulations. We could even say felicidades. We can say mazel tov to the recipients of the Phi Beta Kappa Key of Excellence Award.